Hey guys, and welcome back to another YouTube video. In this video I'll be doing a review of my tips for round 3 as well as doing my round 4 gather round tips and going through and looking how I went. Currently on the ESPN Footytips I am ranked 55,000 out of like 800,000, and then if I go to AFL Tips and go through the AFL.com I am currently ranked 18,000 out of 375,000 or so. So I'm doing pretty well, but there are a couple of tips that I was really annoyed about, to be honest with you. Annoyed about the Essendon St Kilda one, which we'll get to. But outside of that, I thought the big call on the Port versus Melbourne game was a really good tip in my point of view. But missing out on the Essendon one was a big one. So that kind of sucked. But let me just bring up what I actually tipped for each of the games here. So let me just bring it up. So, in the first game, I tipped Brisbane by 14 in the end, and they ended up losing by 20. So I was 34 points off on that one. A pretty bad take on that one, and got to get better at tipping Collingwood. As I think I'm actually 3-1 tipping Collingwood. I'm just so off with tipping Brisbane. I think I've tipped them in every single game, and I think they've lost pretty much all of the games, so that kind of sucked. The next one, I tipped Carlton by 30, and they ended up winning by, 56? So I was a little bit off on that front. I was 26 points off, but that isn't the necessary worst tip. Tipped Freo by 24, and they won by 35. I think did they kick a late goal or something? Nope. They kicked in the last quarter 2 points to 4 goals 3, so that did actually help me get out to the margin that I thought it would be. Then the next game, I tipped St Kilda by 22, and they lost by 4, so a bad tip on my part. I thought St Kilda would run through them through their sort of transition game, but Bonner decided to have one of the worst games off halfback that I have ever seen. 17 turnovers, 6 clangers, 11 ineffective kicks. Admittedly, a lot of them was him just kicking long to a contest, and that contest was then lost in the air by St Kilda to Essendon, and that's counted as an effective kick, but a turnover, and that's why you have only 6 clangers and 17 turnovers. So that was just such a bad game by Bonner. Then I had Melbourne by 12, and they won by 7, so I am taking that as a massive win. It was a weird game, a topsy-turvy game. A lot of shocker calls, a lot of, for both sides, to be honest with you. I thought Melbourne maybe got a little bit of the better ledger of that, but Melbourne were probably the better side in the end just because they kicked so accurately. Port Adelaide, I think, lost the game but won the expected score by like 33 or something. So it just shows that Port just couldn't put them away. So pretty happy about that tip. Then I had Western Bulldogs by 48, and they won by 76 over West Coast, so pretty happy about that tip. That could have gone anywhere in that range, that was a pretty simple tip. Then I had Swans by 35, and Richmond, to fair play to them, they turned up and absolutely put the pressure on the Swans, and that's what is probably the biggest weakness for the Swans and I mean that couldn't be a weakness for any team. I mean we saw it with Essendon doing it to St Kilda. So these teams like like St Kilda, like the Swans, like GWS, you just got to apply so much pressure to them as and that sort of comes through the small forwards. And the Swans really didn't do that to Richmond either. They left out Sam Weeks because of that whole thing, everything that happened, and they didn't really have a pressure forward. So, and Caleb Mitchell he debuted, but he probably didn't do as much as I thought he would, and I think that Jacob Constanti, now looking back on it, probably would have been the better selection, but anyway, Sydney lost, and they move on to West Coast this week, which will probably be a win, I would suspect. It wowould be the biggest upset if they actually lost that. And then I had Geelong by 24, they won by 36. If Hawks actually kicked accurately in the last quarter, Geelong probably would have won by 24, or like 26 or whatever. So, pretty happy about that pick in the end, that Geelong would win by that margin. Thought it was a pretty safe pick as well. Hawks don't look that good this year, but so pretty happy about selecting Geelong to win by 24, and that was a pretty good tip in the end. Now we move on to the round 4 tips. Adelaide versus Melbourne to start gather round. at Adelaide Oval. A lot of people are tipping Melbourne. I would tend to believe that as well. And that is just solely because this midfield mix for Adelaide is so shocking and so just, it is almost egotistical by Nick to just say, nothing's wrong with the midfield. Nothing's wrong. Their clearance to score ratio is 1-7. The comp does it 1-4. That is just not good enough. They're slow, they're contested possession guys, and there's no run in that midfield. And they brought in Sam Berry to it's almost a misery compiler what's going to happen here, in my personal opinion. Melbourne is going to have Clary, Petrarca, Viney. Let me just check as well. I need to just check their team lineup just to show you that the midfield is going to be where the game is won or lost here. We look at Melbourne, Petrarca, Viney, Oliver, and then Salem off, Christian Salem off the bench. I completely butchered that. They've also got Sparrow as well there to give him some help. And even Pickett's probably going to take some time in the midfield as well. And they've also got Neil Billings isn't going to probably have any midfield time, but yeah. And then they've got Billings as well, could take some midfield time, and he's a difference maker as well with speed. So it just shows you the difference in Melbourne versus Adelaide. Whereas Adelaide, if we look at their side, Dawson, I think, is their point of difference in the midfield. Laird, and then they have Keys currently in the midfield, so maybe they listened just fractionally and put Keys as the midfielder. But then again, we know team lists are just so wrong. So I wouldn't be surprised if Keys isn't actually named on ball. But that would be a slight change. A slight good change, but you lose out the pressure forwards, I guess, in a sense. And then on their interchange, they have Burgess, Berry, Crouch, Nankervis, and McHenry probably going to be the sub, just looking at that. I wouldn't be surprised also if Nankervis is the sub. And their halfback is just no run. Their halfback is Patrick Parnell, and that's about it for the run. So they just have no speed on the ball at all, Adelaide. And that's why, in my personal opinion, I think Melbourne are going to win this one by, even to start gather round, they're going to win it by 28 points. They're just going to dominate. Max Gawn is a much better ruckman movement-wise and agility-wise than Riley O'Brien. Petrarca, Oliver, and Viney have a lot more movement and outside game compared to the likes of a Jordan Dawson, Crouch, and Laird combo. So yeah, I think Melbourne just win it by 28 points. And so then we move on to the Friday games. And we have the 5:10 start, Brisbane versus North. That one, we pretty much know if Brisbane don't win this game, as I'm just logging the Melbourne result, if Brisbane don't win the game, I will be severely shocked. It'll basically be top 4 over for them and effectively season over for them, going 0-4. So I'm going to predict Brisbane to massively bounce back, and I think they're going to win it by 50 points over North Melbourne and really, really send a message to the comp that they're not down, that they're not done. They've had a couple of absolute shockers. I think their midfield starts to turn it around this week. And so yeah, I'm not too... I'm still hopeful on Brisbane, to be honest with you. Port against Essendon. I think Port wins this one. I think Essendon are showing good potential, but I think they're showing that they can be got at, and I think Port, if they just kick accurately, are going to win this. They have the home crowd advantage as well. I think Port will also, their home crowd will provide that sort of, the Essendon edge that we've heard and sort of seen, I think will be sort of gone against by the Adelaide crowd, and I think they'll really stick it to them. And so, yeah, I think Port will win it by, I think it will be a close one, but I'm predicting Port by 15 points. West Coast against Sydney. Sydney's $1.03 in this game. West Coast is $12. Sydney's going to bounce back. I think they're going to win it by... I'm going to go conservative again and say 40 points because I was conservative in the Richmond game and Sydney lost. So maybe just going a little bit conservative, saying that Sydney aren't necessarily playing their best footy at the moment. Considering last week, we'll just go a little bit conservative. Freo against Carlton. This one's a tough read, man. This one is tough. Freo have been going absolutely great. 3 games, 146 percentage. The last game though they played against Carlton, they lost 98-45. So I'm probably leaning towards Carlton and just going with the crowd on this pick. And so I'm going to go Carlton by I think 9 points. Then you have Western Bulldogs against Geelong. You've got 4th versus 7th. I think Bulldogs have actually been surprisingly good this year. I mean, they've admittedly played West Coast and Gold Coast, but they were really good in that Gold Coast game, and they did what they needed to do against West Coast. Geelong have been pretty good. They played St Kilda, Adelaide, and Hawthorn. Adelaide at Adelaide Oval, so they've already played there, whereas Western Bulldogs lost to Melbourne, beat Gold Coast, and beat West Coast. What do I think is going to happen? Which Western Bulldogs do I think is going to turn up? Geelong, we don't have their team list back. I don't know when Paddy Dangerfield is returning. I thought they looked really, really good against Hawthorn, to be honest with you. And they've already beaten St Kilda and Adelaide. So I think I'm going to go Geelong by, 15 points. Then we have Gold Coast against GWS. Gold Coast is going to, in my opinion, lose this. GWS look like the form team in the comp. I'm going to have to put GWS long form in there. And I think they're going to win it by, 19 points. I think that GWS's midfield is just on par with Gold Coast, but Gold Coast don't really have that distributor off the halfback that we see out of the likes of GWS. And when you have Buderick, the coach is down there as well, Alex Sexton, you've also got now what's going to be Will Graham. And so you sort of have 3 or 4 guys there that are all trying to distribute it off the halfback. There's no real leader down there in terms of a distributor compared to like a Lockie Whitfield, as well as Ash distributing back down there as well. So I just feel like their distribution's really going to come back to haunt them. And have they really... They played against Richmond, and they've also played against the likes of Adelaide, and they won that Adelaide game, close one, and then they got smoked by the Western Bulldogs, and then had the bye as well. So, yeah, I don't necessarily believe in the hype, to be honest with you, of the Gold Coast, so that's why I'm predicting GWS to win. Then you've got the likes of a Richmond versus St Kilda. St Kilda, I think, will win this one here. Paying $1.35 to Richmond's $3. This sort of shows you what they're saying. Richmond were really good, but I think St Kilda bounced back. I don't think Bonner turns it over 17 times. I don't think Rowan Marshall has 14 clangers. So yeah, I think St Kilda win this one, and I'm going to go Saints by 11 points. And then you have Collingwood versus Hawthorn. I think Collingwood win that one. I think they're starting to turn it around, and I think they beat Hawthorn. They put them to the sword. They're really accurate. I think they win by 35 points. So watch that one be wrong. But that is my tips for the round there, and I guess you'll see me back for the recap of the what is it going to be? The Adelaide versus Melbourne game tomorrow. So I'll see you guys in that one. Bye, guys.